Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Post. Our next guest this episode is a seasoned digital communications expert with a rich multicultural background. She was born and raised in Russia and lived in Germany and the US before settling in Switzerland. With a career that began in social media long before it became mainstream, she has been shaping the digital landscape since 2011. Over the past 8 years, she has specialized in the Swiss banking sector, focusing on digital and online communication. Currently, she spearheads key projects in employee advocacy and social selling, driving brand awareness and lead generation with innovative strategies. So please join me in welcoming our next guest, Lesia. Lesia, are you ready to go behind the post with me?
Yes, I am. Hi, Alina. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your kind words. I'm happy to be here.
Amazing. I'm so excited to have you. And before we dive into what you need to do to build a successful advocacy program in financial services, which is something that you're really well versed in, please can you first give our audience a brief intro into what your role entails?
So, as you said already, I'm a social media manager in an international investment firm. And a part of my role, or actually a key part of my role, is trying to amplify our brand voice by employee advocacy or employee engagement. So, making sure that our people speak not only for themselves, but also for the company. Because ultimately, people trust people and they want to hear real voices.
Yeah, definitely. And on the people trust people, as I said in this episode, we're going to drill down into what makes a successful advocacy program in financial services. And as you said, with people trust people in financial services, building trust and a credible brand is so crucial. And you do that with your people and your people's voices. And employee advocacy on social media is probably one of the best ways to achieve it. And although there are compliance and regulations that can make it challenging in this sector, it really isn't impossible. And financial institutions can still benefit from employee advocacy as long as they have the right approach, right? So I'm so happy to have you here today on the podcast to share how you built your advocacy program and the steps that you have in place to make sure your program stays compliant. So with that, let's jump right in. My first question for you is, how did you make your advocacy program compliant with industry regulations, and what guidelines do you have in place?
Right, so we're straight into not so much fun question because I think everyone thinks that social media is so much fun, it's so easy to do. We're just making a post here, making a post there, but ultimately when it comes to financial services, things are not that easy. So things that are working, for example, in Nike will not work with bank. Things are also that are working in Switzerland will not necessarily work in the US due to different regulations. And a lot of companies are facing the same issue. How can you actually amplify your voice while still being compliant? We unfortunately cannot sell products online. Like I said, it's not something that we have a nice pair of trainers and we can say, by the way, those are great trainers. I've run 100 miles on them and that's the price and just go and buy them. No, that doesn't work like that. So we need to adhere to regulations in different domiciles. Working in an international firm, that means that we have different countries we work at, and different countries have different regulations. So we need to understand, and actually, the first thing is to outline what are our social media rules overall as the company, and then when it comes to our employees. The thing is that actually this happens across all companies. It's not only one specific company that has those regulations, it's really among the industry. I was working before at UBS and we had a similar approach. Basically, it means that in order to stay compliant and safe, the easiest thing to do is not to allow your employees to be active on social promoting the brand. Because once again, you can very easily say something or share something that is not available in this domicile or actually shown as a specific promotion that is not allowed within the industry. So in order to avoid any possible complications, a lot of companies simply say, you can like, you can share our content without any comments. But then the question arises, how do you actually can amplify your company's brand, voice, increase the awareness, increase the reach, if not to activate your employees? And then specific programs arise. So you can be ambassador, social selling, advocacy, you name it. There are different names, but ultimately it's about trying to build a structure, a guideline, allowing your employees to be active on social. We are talking specifically about LinkedIn because it's a professional area, and still to be compliant. So once you have the regulations and understand, okay, who can join the program, what kind of topics you're allowed to talk, discuss. Do you have any specific requirements by the country, by the type of the employee, or for example, by the region? Once it's all summarized, it has to be really, unfortunately, I would say, rigid structure, but based on that, you can continue working, right? So
Yeah,
the first thing is really understanding all the legal requirements, what is allowed and what is not. So in our case, like I said, we are not allowed to talk about performance. We are not allowed to say product names, so specifically funds. We are not allowed to showcase different capabilities. So what does it mean? It means that we only allow to share our thought leadership content, our experience, for example, our knowledge within the company. And that's very hard, right? So B2B sector is definitely very different from B2C.
definitely. And by having these regulations in place, then you know that you can kind of do it with ease. And like as the social media manager or the run of the program, you know, okay, I know what they're restricted on. They know what they can do. They know what they can't do as long as you're training them and telling them. And then you can benefit from employee advocacy. There was one thing that you said that I wanted to highlight. You said part of your guidelines is deciding who can be an advocate. So I want to ask, how did you decide who could be an advocate for your advocacy program? Like, can your employees choose, or is it something that you allot
So when
the
we launched the program, basically it still is purely voluntarily and it's an individual assignment. So whoever wants to join the program, they can. Nevertheless, we do have certain expectations. So currently within the program, we have 360 active employees worldwide from different departments, from different regions. So it's really a global scale, right? And the emphasis, of course, goes to our employees, our colleagues who are in the client-facing role. Because basically, with all the social media activities, with all the digital media presence, what do we want to achieve? Every marketer will tell you we want to grow business, right? So we need to bring revenue, and normally marketing, digital communications, you name it, we're always seen as the cost center. So we're trying to shape ourselves from being a cost center to actually lead generating, right? So the emphasis is for client-facing colleagues, but nevertheless, I think having been working in the company that is so big, it's really important not only to drive the revenue, but to ensure that our brand presence is strong, right? That we have a proper employee engagement and that potential candidates are also seeing us as a good place to work. So what we are trying to do is, first of all, brand awareness. Secondly, expanding the reach, and then ultimately is supporting our business, right, with the clear objectives. And even though that we try to rather have people from the client-facing roles, so relationship managers, it's also completely fine for other employees who are joining from marketing, who are joining from HR services or middle office. The requirement is to be active at least once a month. So there are different requirements in different companies. Within our company and within our advocacy program, the requirement, as the program is license-based, is to have once a month a post via Octopost, obviously.
So then how do you, so you have all these active advocates, you're saying they have to be active once a month. And you also mentioned that they're global, these advocates.
Yes.
So how are you navigating the different laws globally across your teams?
So actually, I would say here's some promotion for Octopost. I'm really happy that within Octopost, whenever you are onboarding advocates, you can assign different fields. So what I'm doing within my organization is that every advocate is being assigned with the region, with the team, and then if we have any restrictions. So what that means that all our advocates who are based in the US, according to the law, according to the local regulations, according to our setup, they are not allowed to create their own posts and they're not allowed to modify existing posts. So that's
Okay.
already have a strong limitation, but nevertheless, we are aware of this, and people who are advocates in the US, we know what's going on, right? So they can use the content that is there. Then coming back to the other fields, let's say we have an advocate who is based in Germany. So also what happens, whenever I'm creating content for advocacy board, I also upload all the content pieces into the structured way where, first of all, advocates can clearly see the type of content in terms of source. Is it our company, like our native content, or is it third party, just generic news, right? And if there is any restriction by the domicile. So what it means that user in Germany will not see the content that is applicable for users in the US, for example, or in Switzerland. So with Octopost feature fields, we can ensure that actually all advocates are getting targeted content for them. And I think that's a really strong feature because, like I said, we don't want the suddenly person who sits in Singapore is sharing content that is specifically for the US or
Yeah.
vice versa. And when you have clear understanding what kind of type of content you have, where it's available, where it should be, and then assigning it with advocacy roles, that helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And it makes it easier. You know which teams have which. They're restricted on the platform, so you don't have to worry about if someone edits a post when they're not supposed to be editing. So you can really iron out and make sure it's all staying compliant the whole way through. So having a tool that can help you do that is really important to be able to get to that compliant program. So I have another question to ask about your processes. So I understand now how you navigate the different laws, how you decide who's an advocate, but then what does the approval process look like when you're giving out the content? Like what do you base it on? Do you have a rule book? Do you have a list of requirements?
So ultimately, everything is based on our social media policy that's been approved by our board of directors. So that's the basis that we work with. And like I said, the most important that we are never talking about products, we are never talking about performances, we're never talking about CAD. So we're not showcasing our potential clients. All this data is really restricted. As I said, it's purely based on thought leadership content. What we as the company have in terms of our knowledge and our expertise with different articles, right? And I'm working with the content that's been already fully approved. So whenever it comes to content from the company, the native content, I call it this way, I only work with everything that has been already pre-approved, and it's so-called global content. If there are any specific requirements or specific articles that are only for this market, I always go and check again with the local approvals. We have the Gyro system that all the approvals are happening there. And only once the content is approved, we have the sign, we have the tick box, then it can go to social. The same or similar approach, because I do believe that employee advocacy is being authentically native, authentically active, not just showcasing the company. Because I always say, look, if you have been inactive all your life on LinkedIn, and then suddenly you're saying Nike, 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 just an example, that's
Yeah.
weird because you're more
Okay.
than that. All of us are more than just our employer. And in order to
Yeah.
stay authentic, it's important to share something that is relevant for you and your connections.
Definitely.
Therefore, the content in our library, it's not only the company content. It's also different industry news or even completely third-party posts on diversity, on education, on sustainability, so so-called softer topics that help to create engagement and common ground with your readers. And why do I say this? That, for example, for US advocates, even such type of content, purely not our content, purely independent content, nevertheless, it has to be approved. So we have some markets, and I think each industry has specific market regulations, would it be pharmaceuticals or finance or you name it. So within our industry, it's the US, and even third-party content that has nothing to do with finance, that has nothing to do with us, still goes through compliance. That's not the,
Yeah.
the fun part, but it is what it
Yeah.
is.
No, but if that's what you have to do to make a compliant program, and what you were saying before with having all different kinds of content, not just company content, is so important because that's what takes you from being an advocate to a thought leader and an expert in your industry. And that ultimately is what's going to gravitate other trust to come towards you. That's going to
Absolutely.
gravitate the industry to come to see what you're talking about online because you're well versed in the industry that you're speaking about. So I think it was a really important point that you mentioned. So once you have all of this, you have the approval process, you have everything you've mentioned so far. That's like sort of like the back end structure, how you do it. When it comes to your advocates, how do you support them when it comes to posting online?
Yeah, by the way, it's not only that, coming a bit one step back again.
Yeah,
So once we have the global policy that is approved, we have the internal academy where advocates are taking a course. They need
yeah,
to pass the compliance test. And then the last step, only then they're getting an access to Octopost, and I'm onboarding them, all of them. right?
Yeah.
So it's several places and things in a row, and I have the whole process marked. I see all the advocates, where they're coming from, what are their regions, what their departments, when they've been onboarded. And also in the past, I've been also looking the social selling index on LinkedIn to see what kind of direction of growth we're getting. But yeah, that's not the fun part. That's like the admin work that people do not see. They have no idea
Yeah.
how much effort and tasks are behind the employee advocacy. Now, the fun part, you asked me, how do I engage the employees? So luckily, as we're in finance industry, finance are still, I would say, if not an ice age when it comes to digital communications, we are still quite far away from everything else, which means that a lot of employees, they would love to be active on social, but they genuinely don't always know how. So having the program for them is actually great to showcase their expertise on LinkedIn, to get connected with their potential clients and existing clients, and to build their own brand. So I would say, because within the advocacy program, you get to get different webinars, different know-hows, different techniques. We are checking your profiles, we are checking your connections, everything. It's an individual check for free, right? So if you have never been active on LinkedIn and suddenly like, oh my God, how do I do this and that? Actually, that's quite engaging. Then to keep our advocates active, well, everyone knows that within Octopus you have different scoring systems, so advocates can play around with themselves. That's great. Within us, we are trying always to give special benefits for advocates. So, for example, our advocates are entitled to individual checkups. Like I said, we are checking LinkedIn profile to see how this can be optimized. We are creating different banners. So I always believe that your LinkedIn page, it's your personal communication and salesperson who works 24/7 worldwide. And you need to ensure that your page looks perfect, right?
Yes.
So within employee advocacy program, all our employees are allowed to get this check. We're checking their pictures, their banners, like individual support. So that's great. And then another thing is, I understand that not everyone is digital native. Moreover, even if you're digital native, you have your own role and responsibilities. And sometimes it seems like, oh my God, I need to go to Octopus to look for the content. I understand we have all different roles and different objectives. So to make life easier, what I'm also doing for our advocates on the weekly basis, actually every Wednesday, I send out a newsletter, internal newsletter with all the content available for advocates. So instead of going several times a week to the platform, they can see a newsletter that has three areas: the generic news, if there is something going on, maybe something exciting, then our company articles, and direct links to this article. So people can see, okay, what's in the pipeline for us, what languages are available, if it's approved in the US, if it's Switzerland only, if it's Germany only, and then they can share it. And then the third party articles, so like sustainability, diversity, inclusion, you name it. So literally, we're also trying to make sure that for advocates, it's as less clicks as it can be. You open the newsletter, you find an article A, you click there, and it brings you directly to the Octopus post.
Yes. That's key. Making it at least steps as possible for your
Yeah,
advocate, so it doesn't seem like it's an extra mile they have to go to at work, and it's simple, it's easy. They can get there in a few clicks is so important, as well as bringing the content to where they are already. So
yeah.
if they're getting anything through their emails, that's why they're already engaged, or their communication channels. It's so important. And you said before that about financial services, like professionals aren't so active on social, and that's really common. That happens with a lot of people I speak to in the industry. They realize that people in their company aren't so active. So having these different methods of keeping them engaged and checking up on their profiles and making sure everything's optimized that maybe they might not know themselves will help you get to that phase where they're active and invested in the program because they have that support. So I definitely think that's a really important thing to highlight that you said before, and it's how you can get like a thriving program that delivers you results.
Yeah.
And as we were saying before, employee advocacy is such a valuable tool, and it's also really valuable to humanizing companies online, and because people trust people, and the human element will always be your employees, and it's especially true in the financial industry. So how do you encourage your advocates to actually humanize themselves online?
So, as I always say during every onboarding, and this is something that I've mentioned earlier, you are a human being. Besides being a professional in this company, you might be a father, a mother, a parent, sister, a brother. You have different common traits, right? And every time you're connecting with your client, so for example, your relationship manager, you are connected on a personal level. You know what the person likes, for example, if they have dogs, cats, if they're in the charity work, and you try to connect on this level. The same goes for social. The reason why people are connected with you most of the times because they know you as a person, and it means they know your traits. So always, it doesn't matter if you've been working in the same company for 20 years, you're always more than this company. You have your interests, you have your views, you have your experience. And that's why I think it's always important to mix between your personal and professional. I know LinkedIn sometimes can be seen now, oh, things are moving like Facebook. Maybe not that much, but I think it's important to outline and find this common perception with your potential customers or readers. For example, within our advocacy program, I had a post from one of the advocates who is also a father. And I really liked his storytelling technique. So he took a picture of his daughter from the back. You don't see
Yeah.
the child, but you can see clearly that this person is the father. And it started off something like talking about the future. So the child asked something about what's going to be in 50 years, something, very naive question that children can
Yeah.
ask. And the father said, answered to the question and said, and that made me think about the future wealth planning for my child, about this, and these aspects. So when you're bringing your professional sphere, professional aspects in everyday life, because ultimately we're all humans, it
Yeah.
becomes just so way more relatable and easy to understand. So I think when people are trying to promote, not to promote, but stay authentic and sincere, simply say happy birthday or Merry Christmas or happy holidays, it is the connection. So yes,
Yeah.
you can publish 25,000 posts about the company, but once you're doing a personal post where you showcasing yourself as the person and the professional together, that brings so much added value, both to you
Definitely.
and the company.
Definitely to both. And it's also, you're right, it's so much more personable and people get a glimpse into who you are. And I think that's what people want nowadays. There's so many thought leaders on LinkedIn. So how are you going to stand out? By being that human, personable thought leader online that isn't afraid to show like who they are as a personality as well as the expertise that they can bring to it. I'm wondering though, then what results have you seen, let's say in the past year?
Results within employee advocacy. So actually, I've been very happy about the program. As I said, we have 360 employees engaged in the program. And just within this half year, so we are now in July 2024, I've just done reporting for first half year in 2024, and our reach within advocacy was more than 5 million users.
Wow.
Now imagine how much money all the marketers would be need to spend in order to do that. So
Yeah.
reach is one thing, but also, for example, with Octopost, you can see all the performance of the post, the link clicks, right? Not only the reach, but also link clicks, because ultimately you want to bring users further to the channel, further to your websites. So I was also giving an example of our colleague who shared one post from the board. That one post itself got 218 clicks, link
Wow.
clicks, not the picture clicks, but the link clicks to the website. If we say that on average LinkedIn click costs €7, that post itself would have spent $1,500, right? Or euros. So here we see a clear monetary value. And I think for every company that wants to be visible on social, that wants to look into the lead generation, that wants to bring the brand awareness and increase the reach, employee advocacy is the must. We as the
Yeah.
company can be connected to 100,000 people, but the whole added value, the whole community of advocacy can bring way more. And what is involved? Just your content, just your manager for the employee advocacy program and the content. So all these resources are already there. You don't need to go to the agency to spend more money. You don't need to add paid, given this economy. Of course, paid would definitely help. But what I'm saying is that the amplification is definitely something that is there, and the best part, it's measurable. It's not
Yeah.
something I'm saying, oh, I believe we grew. No, I don't believe. I see the numbers, I see the performance, I see
No.
which topics are working, which advocates are working, do they need some additional support, what's going on. So I think the best part about being in social, in employee advocacy, digital marketing, or whatsoever, is that we can monitor and measure everything. And based on that, we can outline what are the next steps and which direction we're going and what's the added value to the company
Yeah,
ultimately.
you can see it's working, you know it's working, you can see the results, and it's cost effective, and your results are amazing and really prove that an employee advocacy program in the financial services industry can work. There might be more hurdles to jump through, but the benefits far weigh out the challenges that you have with creating it. Because once you have the system set up, you really can reap the benefits. So then looking forward with the results that you've seen in the past year, what results are you trying to achieve and how do you plan on reaching these goals?
Well, I am planning to keep the same number of advocates. So I think it has to be 360 out of 400 licenses. We have 400. It's quite a good number. Quality over quantity, right? We don't want and it's not just that's my opinion, that company doesn't need to have, any company doesn't need to have everyone on advocacy. It has to be thought through and there is a strategy behind it. But ultimately, as I said, every social media manager, every digital marketing manager, we all want to achieve revenue. So
Yes.
the next step after building a strong employee advocacy presence, it's going in the direction of social selling. Now that's already a different part, different journey, different conversation, again with compliance and legal, but ultimately based on a strong employee advocacy program, there is a possibility for clear lead generation.
Yeah.
So that's my personal aspiration. I think that would be a
Definitely
great.
is. I'm excited for this goal for you because it really, as you're saying, like it's definitely a direction you can take and it will work in the financial services industry as well. And this brings us to our final question. I love asking everybody this question, and I'm wondering because you've had amazing long experience in marketing. So, what's the best piece of social media advice you've ever been given along the way?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think the point is that social media is a two-way street. If you want to be heard and seen, if you want to get connections and engagement, you need to do the same. I always give an example to our advocates. Whenever you're meeting someone for coffee in real life, person tells you a story, you're not just sitting there silent. No,
Yeah.
you engage. The same goes with social media. Once again, to ensure that your connections are engaged with you, you also need to engage with them and stay authentic. So, my advice personally, also in general, that was a bigger advice, but my advice, whenever you're commuting to work or you have 15 minutes of your time, just go through your feed, comment to other people posts, answer your comments. So just stay authentic. Don't expect all the attention for nothing. No, also pay your attention back. Always remember the analogy with the coffee chat. You always try to engage, ask question, and build the connection. The same goes with social. And the point is that you can build these connections worldwide. You're not restricted to only one coffee cup. You have all the possibilities there.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I love that analogy, and it's really true. Social media really is a two-way street. So you've got to show up on one side to have people show up and engage with you on the other side. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you for joining me and telling us all about how you established your advocacy program and you made sure that it was compliant with regulations, and for sharing your results with us that really show the impact it can have on the business. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Alina. It was my pleasure and happy to be here.